Welcome to this week's episode of the podcast. This time we have the honor of hosting Jonathan Barber, an incredible jazz drummer who's played with the likes of Erykah Badu and Pat Metheny. Jonathan's got a new album out called Live at the Jazz Standard, which is exclusive on Bandcamp. I urge you guys to all check it out. Enjoy. Yeah, so we just wanted to kind of start off with New York right now and like how you're doing and how musicians are doing in the pandemic and how things have changed and how's it been in the last couple of months?
The last couple months has been definitely an adjustment, to say the very least. When I experienced COVID in its fullness, I was on the road with my band, Vision Ahead, and we were doing a West Coast tour, and it was our first national, tour. And so we were in the West Coast. I want to say, we was in Portland, Seattle, Spokane, and when we got to LA, that's when we found out that the NBA got canceled because of the coronavirus, and we were just like, okay, we've been hearing about coronavirus, but like if it got to the NBA level, then it's really something. So we ended the tour a week early, and then we all went back to New York, and then I went back to Connecticut just to kind of like clear my thoughts because I was already pretty like not stressed but like overwhelmed from like doing the tour myself because I did it like independently. Once I kind of, really felt COVID as far as like gigs getting canceled, tours getting canceled, like everything kind of being like swiped clean, it was just like, all right, this is something different. And first you go in a state of shock because you're just like, man, like I can't play. Like, you know what I mean? Because everyone's quarantined, everyone's shut down. And then all the upcoming stuff that I'm preparing for is taken away. So it's like, what in the world do I do now? But I think it was a good adjustment for everyone. I think first off, we all needed to rest. And I think we all needed to just kind of like take a breather because everybody, whether, you were working all the time or you're working a little bit, everyone was like on the go, right? Like that's the culture, now in this generation. It's like go, 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 go. You got social media. It's just like everything's just so fast paced. And it kind of gave us and it definitely gave me a lot of time to just like sit back, reflect, and then really like challenge myself and take on things that I normally wouldn't have the time to do, or things that like I wanted to learn. And like I got into Ableton, through this whole quarantine time, and that's different. Like I consider myself like an acoustic improviser, but to kind of do an electronic side and deal with that, and it kind of opened me up to some new things. And obviously, I'm putting out a live record next week, actually. No, this Friday. Excuse me, the 23rd of October. So then that was like a thing where I'm just like, putting out some music and having video content, and you know what I mean, like just like kind of being engaging, and like, I have a drum studio now, and so having lessons and recording samples and recording songs. In the course of this pandemic, I released 2 records. Legacy Holder and Live at Jazz Standard. Now like still composing music for Vision Ahead, and composing some music for some other stuff as well. Giving lessons and how having a space, and shout out to my good friend Steve Casano at Parkville Sounds in Hartford, Connecticut, who let me get a space, and now I get to do what I do now. So, which is like partnership, which is a whole other topic, but you know what I mean? So it's been cool.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of musicians we've interviewed have commented on that. They have now like a time to sort of learn things that they weren't doing before, kind of expand their knowledge base and work on many different things, releasing records, for example, too.
Right.
You commented on how this generation has got kind of this go, go, go mentality, and that everyone's like constantly doing things, and you even said that it was nice to sort of dial back a little bit and get a little break. How do you sort of cope with this sort of new generation we're in, where everything's always go, go, go? Do you have certain strategies that you like to employ to sort of help manage that kind of sort of more hectic and intense schedule?
Yeah, I think you have to have that balance of like grinding, and rest your mind, because I think that's the one thing that we don't realize that's like always running, like our mind, like even like for me, and I guess I'm at fault too, like before I go to bed, like I find myself like on my phone and I'm checking stuff out, and it gives me 1,000 ideas. And then like I'm like trying to go to bed with 1,000 ideas running through my head, you know what I mean? It's so crazy. But yeah, I would say man, you got to be strategic. You know, like you have to know what you want. You have to know, like, at least research the steps on how to get there, or what you think the steps are. And then obviously, like, once you act it out, the revelation will come, like, okay, like this works or this doesn't work. But I think you kind of have to be, real intentional, and I think that can be the misconception of, like, being busy is not necessarily being intentional, or just like having an abundance of something is not necessarily, like, honing in on what's really for you, and finding your voice and your sound in this industry. So I guess I would say, yeah, to be intentional, to like research, to and then kind of have that balance where you're going hard with something, or you're putting your time in, but then you're also like letting yourself kind of breathe. I think that balance is super important.
Yeah. So if we could talk about the new album a little bit. I know it's coming out on Bandcamp, and there's a bunch of different sort of combo packs, I guess. And there's even, you released some charts to go along with the music. Was that originally the plan, when you went to the Jazz Standard to record this?
Yeah, it was yes and no. Like, we did the gig at the Jazz Standard the day before we went to the studio, and so that's kind of like what I do a lot of time. Like, before we record a record, I try to get some gigs. I also record my gigs too, which is another thing that I encourage everyone to, like, record your shows, man. Like, because you just never know. And with that show, side note is that was like a raw mix. Like, when I talked to the guy, he was just like, okay, I'm just like put the mics in and send it through the board and just send it to you. And when I heard it, I sent it to the band, for cats to check out. And the guitarist, Andrew Renfro, hit me up and he was like, yo, did you hear the gig? And I was like, no, not really. Because again, we're in the studio. So I'm like, listen to that. He was like, it sounds killing. And I was like, yeah, okay, cool, thanks. And he was like, man, if I were you, I'll release it as the record. And I'm just like, dude, we just did two nights in the studio. Like, what? Like, I'm gonna, like, just blow this money, I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, I'm just saying, if I were you, that'd be the live record. That'd be the record because it sounds great. And I listened to it and I was like, yeah, it does sound great. Like, the balance of it, you know what I mean? It wasn't like you can't hear the bass, or the drums are too loud, or sax is too loud. Like, it was super balanced. And I'm like, okay, like, what am I gonna do? And so at first, my initial plan was to do a double CD, to do the studio version and the live version, a double CD, and put it out. And then I was just like, like, that culture, if you will, is like kind of long gone. Like, that's too much content at one time to just give out. So then I was just like, then I thought to myself, like, all right, well, these songs are so long, because there is live. I'm like, I don't think that's gonna work. So I was like, I went with my gut. I did the studio version, and so I was like, like, maybe I always had it in the back of my head of, like, releasing a live record. I always wanted to do it. Number one. Some of my favorite recordings are live records. Yeah. And I just wanted to do it. I always wanted to do a live record, especially in New York. You know what I'm saying? Like, New York, that's like the mecca of this music. Yeah, exactly. And so once COVID hit, and, again, my wheels are turning as far as, like, trying to be strategic, trying to, like, still put out fresh content and, like, think forward. I'm just like, I guess I could release this record, this live record. And Legacy Holder had such a good turnout, or so much good reviews, I would say, and it was well received, that I'm just like, I think that people are ready to hear it in a live context, especially because actually we're supposed to do a CD release at the Jazz Standard this past summer. I'm gonna say in, like, July or in June. Yeah. Obviously that got swiped away. And I was like, nah, you guys are staying home. So, yeah. So, like, I'm like, okay, yeah, like, they can, like, hear us, like, playing live, and not in the virtual concert context, but just, like, where you can hear the hand claps, everything, you know what I mean? Like the stuff that I was playing, the stuff that wasn't planned. And so I was like, okay, that's perfect. And then this summer, again, like, the state of the music industry, right? And how these, social music platforms, like a Spotify and Tidal, Apple Music, which it's obvious that the balance of the proceeds going to the artists aren't as fair as it should be, right?
Yeah.
And so, I've been vocal about it on Instagram, and I'm just like, okay, like we got to like try to change it, man. It's like, wait, what's some other platforms? And I knew about Bandcamp before, but once I start digging into Bandcamp, I was like, man, this is how it should be. You can buy music on an artist site. Most of the money goes to the artist, and I think that's a good relation. And so then, like, again, the wheels start turning. I was like, okay, like what's some other aspects? Then I realized you can sell product and merchandise on Bandcamp. And then I thought, like, okay, number one, like I can make this exclusive. So the live at Jazz Dinner is not going to be on Spotify or Apple Music or Tidal. It's only going to be on Bandcamp. And I'm going to do vinyl because, and again, it's like I kind of went after my passions here,
Mm-hmm.
By doing a live record. I always wanted to do vinyl. I thought that was really cool. And so I'm able to do vinyl. And then I thought to myself, okay, like what are some other incentives that I can give to fans, if you will, or supporters that can, buy this product. So it's like T-shirts that was already selling, signature drumsticks, the charts. Many people have been asking me to, like, oh, could I, purchase, the Vision Head song from you, or can you send me 29, or you know what I mean? So I'm just like, you can have all the music, you can play with your band, or you can play along with it, or however you want to just have it. Maybe you want to frame it on your wall. That's great, You can have some that, you can even, if you want like a virtual concert, for those who want to, I don't know, you know what I mean? So it's just like, it kind of, I just wanted to make it engaging. And so, yeah, I've did a 7-week pre-order where people can put their pre-orders in, and when it comes out, it goes straight to you, and it comes out Friday. So I'm super excited for it.
These sort of strategies that you've come up with to sort of market the album and sort of provide more things for fans, is this a way to sort of combat the fact of all these sort of streaming services, develop ways around using that? Because I feel like a lot of people, they hate streaming services, but they're also like, what can I do
there's no way.
I don't really know, and
Exactly.
so they just kind of stick with it because there's no better option in some ways.
Yeah, no, I mean, totally. I think we just have to continue to think outside the box and just and like kind of connect the dots. I don't think that Bandcamp is our way out as far as like, okay, to solve the problems of the music industry. It's Bandcamp. I think they kind of pitch a good offer for musicians to kind of catapult their brand in the faces of consumers. So, for me, I think Bandcamp is great because there could potentially be an exclusivity, as far as like, again, with this live record, you can only get on Bandcamp. So it kind of like, my hope is that, we can somewhat normalize, the value of music.
Right.
You know what I mean? And not really take it for granted, and support the artist, and just know that like you can be directly in connection with the artist. With that, attaching to your Instagram or your Facebook of, putting out content and still being accessible, and people can, see what you do. I think kind of having a website, I think all those components kind of can generate amongst each other to kind of, go against some of the drags, if you will, of the industry.
Yeah, so you're just talking about how the Bandcamp stuff, all the marketing you do on there and with your website, your social media, things like that. What have you sort of learned over the years in terms of how to market yourself and how to make all those platforms work together to the best benefit they can in terms of getting your band out there, getting yourself out there as a drummer?
Yeah, I mean, you have to understand like what you want to do, not necessarily like, the way of success or the way of fame, but like how do you want to look or be portrayed as an artist? Like, are you, the composer, the arranger that like you want people to go on your page and be like, man, did you see how he or she arranged that song, or do you see how this person played that song, or you you have a band that you want to push. So for me, I would say, speaking of what I'm doing, is just like it's pushing like me, the band leader. So you go on my page, you're seeing content from shows, like my original music, and it's just like me as a band leader, like as an artist,
Mm-hmm.
so it's just like you get a quick idea, like, okay, Jonathan Barber, the artist. And then there's other things I was doing along the way that I was like branding myself, which I kind of figure out what realized like exactly what I was doing. At first I was doing hashtag drums around the world, because at first I thought like everyone was hashtagging, and I was like, okay, like, and I just kept doing it, and after a while, people would be like, drums around the world, and I was just like, yeah, and just realizing like it's part of a brand, you know what I mean? And so,
Yeah.
I think hashtags is kind of more of just like, you know, marketing, and now like, as people, follow tags, or tags kind of lead to different things, it can kind of, you know, hopefully get you caught in the traffic of what people are looking at. Yeah, like if you're just like posting pictures, like photos, or pictures of yourself that you just like chilling, or like nothing that's like really leading the people to like your artistry, it's gonna be hard for people to take you serious if you want your artistry to be seen. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So you got to think about like how you want to be viewed, how you want to be portrayed, like what you're going after, and like, is this a good reflection of that? You have to ask yourself like these questions, like, is this a good reflection? Like, if I want to be, if I have this band and I want people to kind of like get a sense of who we are, and like to see how good we are, like, am I posting like clear and quality content that people can hear, and see, and be captivated by? Like, I'm not saying like you got to post every hour, every minute, but if you're only, posting like once a month, again, it can be kind of difficult, for people to kind of like latch on, and stay with you,
Right.
so.
I think that's some really good advice, and particularly sort of identifying what your function is, what you're trying to represent, and then making sure that the things you post are consistent with that, so that people get like a clear, sort of concise message of who you are and what you're trying to do. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that advice goes a long ways. Um, so we talked a little bit about how the album is coming out on Friday, but we wanted to maybe talk a little bit more about sort of the process behind the compositions you wrote, and like
Hmm.
what you're trying to get across, maybe some philosophy behind it, etc.
Yeah. Um, so, I guess like vision ahead, like the concept behind the band is just like recognizing the shoulders that we stand on musically, and just taking our current time to vocalize like our thumbprint and our DNA into the continuum of this music. I mean, I'm so influenced by all of the greats, that came before me. But I'm also like, okay, it's 2020. I'm 30 years old. I have something to say as well. Well, you have the younger generation that's like, looking up to me as like big bro, and then you have the older generation that's like looking down at me, of like, you know, got to carry on. So it's just like, while I'm in this position, like, let me kind of give my thumbprint of like my influence to culture, and to this world, and to music, and express my feelings in an authentic and genuine, honest way, that someone can take that as inspiration to be the best them. You know what I mean? So I mean, to me, like, that's like vision ahead. And then as far as like compositions is concerned, like, obviously, like, I write majority of the music, and like, I guess like some basic things is like, I always like told myself, like, when I'm writing music for this band, like, I don't want everyone to solo over the same thing. I'm kind of more into section writing. Like, if you kind of notice, like, everyone in their solos, for the most part, like, solo over like a different kind of section.
Right.
Because usually, like, in like typical like jazz stuff, you have like a form, you play the head in, you solo over it, head out. That's
Yeah.
kind of like what it is. But for me, I'm just like, just try to keep the listener engaged. Like, okay, maybe the piano player might solo the melody, and then for the sex solo, we might go completely here. And to me, like, that, like, the song Vision Ahead, that encapsulates like what I was trying to do. You know what I mean? So you got the melody, and then, make a long story short, the guitar player Andrew, he solos over like an atonal groove, and then he cues a phrase. Which, by the way, I don't want to go off a tangent, but
Go
the
for it.
thanks, man. So like the concept, like what Vision Ahead, I was like, I just want to take as much like isms and influences and put it into a song, but not be like cheesy with it. Like not be so like where everyone can just recognize it, but just kind of have this like subliminal thing, like, oh yeah. So, like for example, like when I the first like the main line of Vision Head, like I got the concept from like One Finger Snap, as far as like they just play a line and then like that's really like the melody. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And he got soloing. So I kind of want to do that. And so with Andrew's solo, it's like atonal. So he cues a phrase that leads to the sax solo. But the phrase is from Roy Hargrove's poetry featuring Common and Erykah Badu.
Yeah.
At the end, I don't know if people caught that or not, but he plays that, and then it's like call and response, and it goes into Godwin's solo, which is over stablemates.
Right.
So he plays that. Once he's done, it goes to the bridge of Vision Ahead, which is Tabor's solo. Then when Tabor's done, it goes to the vamp, which is my solo.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So it's kind of like we all have a different thing to kind of like express ourselves. And so that's kind of like my general concept when I'm writing music. There's a saying that like there's nothing new under the sun. So I'm like, composition is basically like copy and paste, but it's like in the slickest way. It really is. Like, you know what I mean? Like if it's some kind of influence, it may not be like note for note, but it's some kind of influence. You know what I mean? So for me, I guess like with Legacy Holder, I felt like it was like a continuation. If it felt kind of like more mature, for me, because it's like now I start writing music, for that band more. So I kind of felt kind of more like, all right, this is what I think our direction is. But yeah, I mean, there's so many people that I was like influenced by that I kind of either thought of them or something, there's some chord that reminded me of something, and then it inspired me for something else, within those compositions.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the more music, you listen to, or the more open you are to listening to different things musically, the more possibilities you can choose from when you compose music.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, over your career, in addition to leading your own band, just checking out your bio, I mean, you've played with some like all-time greats, and you mentioned those influences. For example, the Roy Hargrove thing, the Erykah Badu. You actually got a chance to play with Erykah Badu, and a couple of years ago, probably sometime last year, I just stumbled across a video on YouTube of great trumpet player Christian Scott. He was doing like Amoeba What's in My Bag thing. He just went into a record store and some records. He said Erykah Badu is, in his opinion, was one of the last great, jazz singers. And I was just wondering, I mean, from your experience playing with her, would you say that her approach to the music and to singing the music, even though it's not necessarily jazz, is it jazz oriented, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I think the spirit is in there totally. I think the spirit is totally in there. How I play with her, I'll say, was I guess I got a phone call from this guy named Ted Harney, who was one of the directors for the Brooklyn Philharmonic. And to make a long story short, he called me. He was like, "Hey man, are you free this week?" And I was like, "Yeah, I am." And so then he was saying how he's okay. Well, I'm with the Brooklyn Philharmonic, and we are going to do the music of Erykah Badu from that record, New America Part 1.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, okay, cool. So obviously they need a drummer because there's no drums or no drum set, I guess, in an orchestra or the Philharmonic.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, cool. And they go, yeah, cool. So like we'll have these rehearsals these days, and then these days we're gonna have it with Erykah, and then and I was like, Erykah who? He's like, oh, like Erykah Badu, and I was like, oh shoot, she's gonna do it too, because I'm just thinking it was like a tribute,
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh my goodness. So obviously, like, I knew like some of the songs, but then I just like went through that record front and back, upside down. I was just checking out the record, like, whatever. And so we did the rehearsals, like we did the gig. It was great, and um, it might have been at the very end. I finally had like a conversation with her,
Mm-hmm.
and so she was just like, "What did she say?" Oh, she was like, I walked up to her, and before I even said anything, she was like, "Drummer, the heartbeat of the operation." And I was like, "Right on, right on." And she was like, "Yeah, you got that hump. You got that hump." And I was just like, "Man, like I live life now." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, what she meant is like, yeah, like I had the feel, like like I had the groove, and we talked about Cream Riggins, because
Okay.
he was actually he produced a lot of those songs,
Yeah.
and so she was like, she was saying like how he's a jazz drummer, so he has some of those sensibilities, like that she likes, and it's a sensibility that makes him very unique, which, man, I'm a fan of Cream Riggins. Um, and and so yeah, we talked about like producing music, and she talked about Mama's Gun, and I mean it was just kind of just like a definitely just like a eye opening, because I guess my another point is like she just sees it as like music and feeling, not necessarily just like, oh,
By
this is
genre.
jazz, or
Yeah.
yeah, or this is neo soul, because I mean we never talked about that term, but from my understanding, I don't think she even like rocked with that term like neo soul.
Okay.
But nah, that was definitely just like, you know, I see her a part of. She's like a leader of like a sound or a feeling. You know what I mean? Like, if you want to call it neo soul, whatever. But like, she's definitely a in the forefront of that. That many singers to this day idolize her, and definitely take some of her DNA. But man, nah, she's definitely a great you know
I guess some of your experiences linking up with these musicians, do you seek out musicians you want to play with, or do you just wait till the call comes to you? How does it sort of work?
Man, you never wait for the call to come to you, because you'll be waiting all year long. Man, no, not at all. So yeah, you got to go out and get it.
Yeah.
As far as like who you want to play with, like, I mean, I think with the exception of probably Erykah Badu, there's gonna be some things that you're gonna get called for that's gonna just be a blessing, and you're gonna be like, oh my gosh. Like, there's one time, Jimmy Green, great saxophonist from Bloomfield, Connecticut, one of my mentors and musical inspirations, had a concert, and I don't even know if Tane couldn't do it or Lewis Nash couldn't do it, but one of those drummers just couldn't make it.
Yeah.
And he called me to do it, and I was available, and I did it. And it was
Wow.
Kenny Barron on piano, Kurt Elling singing, and John Petitucci on bass. It's like, yeah, you know what I mean? And some stuff you have to be ready for. And I think if like, just keep doing what you're doing, I think like that you'll be on people's radars here and there, where they'll just give you these crazy opportunities. But as far as like for Jeremy Pelt, I definitely, like, when I heard his band, I was like, man, I want to play with him. You know what I mean? So I would like go to his shows. I was like, recording the music, as far as like on my phone. I would like write down the set list, as far as like he said, okay, Pandora's Box first, and then he went to Milo Hayward second, and then he did a ballad, and then you know what I mean? Like, I would just know all that stuff, to the point where when he called me for, I guess, like, audition or to rehearse, I didn't need no charts. I didn't need anything. And he's like, "You need any charts?" Like, nah, I don't. And so he was like, "Okay, well, let's do this such a like Pandora's Box." And we played it, and then he's like, "Oh wow, like you do know it," which shows that, like, okay, number one, this guy's studious. He's responsible. He checked out the music. Like he's hungry. You know what I mean? Like, I think these are good qualities to have for a band leader. Like, now, since I'm a band leader, like, I look at those qualities, in my band, or if my original guys can't make it and I need a sub, those are the qualities I look for.
Yeah.
With Pat, it's an interesting thing with him, because, like, I mean, of course, I've been a fan for him for years. Even in high school, like, before I got to Arts Collective, like, I was checking out his music and not knowing that it was him. You know what I mean? Like, it was this one song, it was Minuano, and I hear it. I'm like, man, that melody is so dope. And I was like, man, who's the composer? And like one person didn't know, and I like kind of like asked around, and finally someone was like, Pat Metheny. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like never heard of him, but man, it's killing.
Yeah.
And then to fast forward, like he like randomly reached out and was just like, yo, man, like I checked some stuff out that you've done. It sounds great. Like hopefully we can get together. And I was just like, oh my goodness, like, whew, what are the chances? And
Yeah.
so there are a couple times that I play duo with him. I'll go to his house and we'll just jam.
Mm-hmm.
From that first experience, I was just like, man, I'm going to devote my time to like really prepare myself for this gig. You know what I mean? Like, and the reason I said that, like the first time we played together, like we played some standards, and then I think he played like one song that I wasn't really too familiar with, and he was like, oh no, that's cool. He's like, but like here's some records to check out, and obviously he gave me like this like long list of like records, because he done so much, so it's just like yeah, okay. And man, I took that as like an independent study. I enrolled myself in the Pat Metheny grad program of just like, man, I'm going to check it all out, and not just like check it out, but I really want to like just study just the dynamics, the feeling, the rise and fall, like the motion, and like the sensitivity, all like just everything about it. And obviously like all the drummers of between Paul and Vertico, obviously Antonio, Roy Haynes, Billy Higgins, Bob Moses, of course, the first guy that did that recording, Bright Side's Life. So man, I was like kind of just checking it all out, and then occasionally, we'll play duo, and this wouldn't happen for about like 4 years, to be honest,
Mm-hmm.
and to the point where when he did actually do the first tour, I felt that I was like, okay, I'm prepared. And I'm glad he asked me at that time and not when he first started playing. You know what I mean? Like I kind of needed some time, and I kind of feel like right now, like I have a strong sense of his spirit musically, and like his directions and how to accompany that. It's not about like, oh, I want to show him how dope I am and like check out this solo that I'm working on, but it's just like, nah, man, like I can really catch on to his vision as a composer, and catch on to his vision as an artist, and support that in such a way.
Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about sort of the psychological aspect of like what's going through your head when you, I don't know, first go to Pat Metheny's house and then sit down at the kit and start playing. What are you maybe preparing for that? You can talk a little bit about, and maybe like, what's going through your head when you're first sitting down? Like, are you nervous? What is that experience like?
I mean, first off, man, like I will say that, like, man, Pat Metheny's like a beautiful, person. Just like super down to earth, and like every time, like, if I like when I did go to his place and play, and even to this day, like we would just have conversation. It's not just so much of just like, playing, and we'll just like talk, and it'll be super super chill. But of course, like like when I'm playing like Bright Side's Life, I'm just like, oh gosh, like what I mean, that's just like an iconic song that was composed before I was even a thought. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's just like, goodness gracious, wow. So yeah, I mean, I will say this, like I got over it like real quick. Like at first I was like, oh my gosh, like it's Pat Metheny, But then I kind of told myself, I'm just like, man, like you wanted this. Like this is something that, it was like a dream, and like it was something that I just like worked really hard at, And it's just like, I'm like, I want Pat Metheny to experience Jonathan Barber. You know what I mean? Like I didn't want to go into that situation trying to sound like any other drummer. Or of course, like I'm going to take the bits and pieces of their genius of how they play that music, and let that inspire me to serve the music well. But I never want to walk in to be like, let me try to sound like this person, because that would defeat everything that I'm trying to do. Like I want him to experience, you know, Jonathan Barber as he experienced Roy Haynes, as he experienced Bill Stewart, or whoever.
Mhm.
So I'm just like, yeah, like I mean, like I know the music, like I just have to like I'm gonna just play. You know what I mean? And I think the beautiful thing is like when you have that belief and that feeling and that drive to like create music, and when you guys do create music and the people love it, it's just like wow, like this is bigger than me, and I can't get in the way of that.
Mm.
You know what I mean? So it's just kind of like I feel so blessed to be in the situation, but like I'm not going to be like, oh, I have arrived, or oh my god, like, this is so deep, and I can't, hang or whatever. It's just like, nah, man, I'm here, and I had the opportunity to let people hear and feel me. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we're kind of approaching sort of the towards the end of the interview. I know you have to leave at 6 o'clock for you. So we wanted to maybe do sort of two more questions, bring it back
Mm-hmm.
to first your idols and like
Mm-hmm.
and sort of how you got into music in the first place. I was just wondering how did your journey begin?
Yeah. So it started due to my father. He still plays here and there, but he played the drums in church, and I was like his roadie, growing up, pretty much. Because the thing was, I went to a family church where my aunt and uncle were the pastors, and they used to rent a YMCA. So every Sunday we have to bring all the gear to the YMCA, set it up, break it down, and bring it back home. So I was like carrying his drums, like giving him the snare drum, like putting the clutch on the hi hats.
Yeah.
So at a young age, like I had a good barometer of like the drums kit, So that kind of like got me like really hands on, and then obviously I got to see my dad, and I was like mesmerized by that. And one cool thing that my dad did was he always used to set up the drums in the living room. So we have like a TV, we have furniture, and then next to it like a drum kit just set up, And so I would just play it here and there, and then like go play video games and play it. And he had that record collection, and just let me just kind of like explore through it. And that was just kind of like an organic way of being accustomed to music, and to kind of like build a relationship with music. You know, he was never. It wasn't like he had me on this schedule, or he like gave me lessons per se, but he always used to say like, you know, he'd be like, man, play the pocket, and tell a story. Like those are his two things. You know what I'm saying? Like he was always say like groove is king, and when you express yourself, like tell a story.
Wow.
Like build. Like how do you build? Like start. Do something with the times, or do something simple, and then so then when you do something busy, it'll be more. You know, people can latch onto it. But if you start out busy, then it's like there's nowhere to really go. You
Yeah.
know.
Mhm.
So yeah, definitely like my dad. And once I got to, I want to say junior year, going into my senior year that summer, um, I got into the Arts Collective. They had a summer camp where people can learn about music, dance, drama, visual arts. And the dope thing was, you go to the camp, and it was funded through the city of Hartford, and each person would get $100 a week. And being what 16, 17 years old, getting $100 a week, I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, that's some money. Like
Yeah.
I'm sign me up. I'm loaded now. And so yeah, it was at the Jack McLean Institute. For those who know or don't know, obviously Jack McLean was a jazz giant, in
Mhm.
this industry, a legendary jazz saxophonist, also activist, leader, professor, educator. And so obviously he had this at the school program. And then I went to it. Then my senior year, that's when I attended it year round, which led me to go to um, the University of Hartford, the Jack McLean Institute of Jazz, which was the jazz study program that he founded. So he founded a after school program that's like high school on down, and then a university college. So that's like the thing to do in Connecticut. You went there and then you went to the college. So from that point, I studied with Eric McPherson, which is an amazing drummer. If you know him or not, man, check him out. This is like one of the best. Like, not trying to be biased because he's my teacher, but just like the feeling that he gets out of the drums and his creativity and his spirit, it's just so beautiful. I stayed with him for 4 years, and that just opened me up because again, I grew up in church, so my attack was super harsh, not harsh, but it was super like heavy.
Yeah. Got all those gospel chops.
Yeah. Like I was trying to go for blood on those things, but yeah, he definitely opened my creativity and just like that I got into reading and all that good stuff, man. And he was such an influence, man, such an influence. Even to this day, like obviously, like I try to talk to him as much as I can, but yeah, he's someone that's definitely on my corner. Always gives me some solid game on life in this industry. But yeah, I mean, but as far as like just drummers in general, man, like Will Kennedy, the lefty, I gotta give it up to him. Like I was definitely listening to a lot of Yellow Jackets growing up, and obviously like Dennis Chambers when growing up, man. I'll say this: my dad had this VHS, and it was like a compilation, and it was so killing. So the first part was Mike Clark playing with Paul Jackson Sr. And they were playing like duo, but obviously it was like a demonstration of Mike Clark doing some stuff. So he's like, doing all the linear, actual proof stuff. And I was like, man, that's so dope. And then I went to the second clip, which was Dave Garibaldi playing with Tower of Power.
Oh, wow.
And so then he's breaking down Soul Vaccination, Squib Kicks on the serious side, What is Hip. And I'm just like, okay, so linear, killing, Dave, that funk, and is locking with the band. And then the third one was Dennis Chambers playing with John Schofield. And I was like, what is that? Because and it was so crazy. They opened with a song called Trim. And Dennis was playing. And when I was younger, I could never understood the rhythm of that vamp. And once I realized now, like it comes in on beat 2. So I always thought that downbeat was the one. And I used to like flip me out, man. I was like, man, what is that? And so, yeah, so you hear Dennis, he'll play, and then he would kind of like demonstrate a couple things, and then it ended with Chad Smith, with Flea doing
Flea,
duo. Yeah, it wasn't really with the Red Hot Chili Peppers. It was just him and Flea, and what I learned from that was like intensity. Like my man, I'm just like he's playing so hard, so loud, consistently, so much feeling for nonstop, And growing up, I'm just like, I want to do it all. Like it wasn't like, oh man, like I just want to do what Dennis is doing. I just want to do what Mike Clark. I'm just like, I love Mike Clark's sensibility and his angle, and then I love how Dave Garibaldi plays a groove, but it's not necessarily everything on 2 and 4, but it's locking in with the percussion player. And then with Dennis, it's just like, I never saw anyone that creative. You know what I'm saying? Just how like fast he was and just in the licks and the patterns he was playing. And then I want the intensity like Chad Smith. So like that was just like a great buffet of like drumming, in the spectrum. And then I got into, obviously jazz, and then, then you're in college, so you're checking out Max, Buhana, Papa Joe, Roy Haynes, A.T., Billy Higgins, Philly Joe, just like all those guys, you just eat them every day. And so then like, that was my experience, and even now, even like some of my, I guess like, contemporaries like, Justin Brown and Kendrick Scott, those are 2 guys I really admire. And obviously Nasheed Waits, who's much older, but man, I love Nasheed, Ralph Peterson. And like to me, Nasheed and Ralph, in my college experience, aside from Eric, they definitely were nurturing with me. I had a great relationship with them, had a great relationship with Lewis Nash. I had his number, and I would always call him, ask him questions, checking in, check up on him. And he would just give me so much wisdom. Every time he was playing New York, I would nag him, to try to get on the list, and he'd be like, yeah, sure. And he would sit me right by the drums. Like, he never gave me a lesson, but like that was a lesson. And he was like, okay, come to the Vanguard Wednesday. I'll come there. I'll sit right by the drums and just like watch him play brushes or watch him play time and how he accompanies the band. And, so, I mean, those are just like, monumental like points in development of just like not only checking someone out, with records or YouTube, but, live or just, talking to them, maybe asking them a question and just, building, some level of relationship that way. So
Great. Yeah, I think that's all our time. So, but thank you so much, and I hope everyone goes and checks out your album and goes and buys it on Bandcamp to support the artist. And again, just really appreciate having you on. So
thank you, man.
Man, my pleasure. Thank you guys, man. Yeah, I love it.